When you read the title of The Strongest Beings in God of War, only one name comes to mind: Kratos. But there are several other gods, titans, and giants that are insanely strong as well. Most of these gods were so powerful that they were the fundamental pillars of reality itself. When they die, concepts like the sun, the ocean, and death itself moved into chaos. To properly rank these beings, we first need to understand the fundamental mechanics of the power system in God of War. Gods, unlike the monsters from other games, or powerful soldiers, or any other species, gods in this universe get stronger and stronger with time. As Cory Barlog confirmed, the Norse version of Kratos is more powerful than the earlier goatee version of Kratos, which was far more ruthless. Before we step into the hierarchy, let me set some rules. We are ranking these beings based strictly on the state in which they exist during their primary encounters, or their most relevant historical lore depictions shown in the franchise. We are looking at the versions of the characters that Kratos, or the narrative, directly interacts with, and we are taking characters from both the Norse world and the Greek world. And finally, before starting our official power ranking, there are some honorable mentions. When we talk about the strongest beings in God of War, we almost always talk about the gods that punch big mountains with ease, or gods that do those lightning attacks. But Mimir is different. I mean, very different from most of the characters in the game. I know by now, all of you would be typing in the comment section, how is Mimir in this list? If we are following our rule of judging characters by the state we find them in-game, Mimir obviously cannot be on the main list. When Kratos and Atreus finally meet him at the highest peak in Midgard, he cannot fight. In fact, he cannot even move. He's literally tied to a magical tree. But then a question comes to mind. Why would the All-Father, Odin, the most paranoid and ruthless god, spend so much time and magic to trap this man? Odin wiped out almost all of the giants without a second thought, but he kept Mimir alive for 109 winters, visiting him every single day just to torture him. Mimir's main power was his intelligence. He wasn't just called the smartest person alive for no reason. For a long time, he was Odin's personal advisor. He was the ambassador of peace, which is pretty iconic of how the world of God of War really is. But Odin is the kind of god who is literally obsessed with the future, and all he wanted to do was somehow change Ragnarok and his future. When Mimir started helping other races instead of just helping Odin, the Allfather realized that Mimir was a big threat, and he needed to be dealt with as soon as possible. Mimir's greatest fear wasn't taking down an immortal god or anything like that. Instead, it was far more impactful in a broader sense. His biggest fear was tricking the Allfather himself. Odin wanted to find Jotunheim, the hidden realm of the giants, so he could wipe them out and steal their magic of seeing the future. The giants destroyed all the bridges and hid the realm so well that even Odin couldn't find it. The giants trusted Mimir so much that they actually gifted him magic crystals to put in his own eyes, which then turned his eyes into Bifrost, which Kratos used to travel to Jotunheim. Mimir knew the exact lost path to Jotunheim. He knew about the Unity Stone, a secret tool that could trick the travel room. He knew how to read the forgotten Jotun language on the walls. But he still chose to be quiet and not reveal their secrets, which proves something far more important. Even bigger and stronger gods break once they are tortured like this. And this feat of Mimir alone proves how mentally tough this guy was. But his knowledge is far beyond just the 9 realms. He knows a massive amount about other mythologies, especially Olympus. Remember the Helheim section from 2018's God of War, where Kratos was confronted by his father's memories? He yells, "Zeus, get out of my head." Mimir is left in total shock. The realization hits him that during all this time, he was hanging from the belt of the legendary Pantheon slaughtering ghost of Sparta. Mimir had heard the terrifying legends of what Kratos did to Greece, but even the smartest man alive couldn't guess who he was before this. And his reaction to the fate of Olympus is also very interesting. He says that From what he heard, the Greek gods had it coming. Before we move on, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty of videos incoming that I'm sure you don't want to miss. Moving on. The second guy that I wanted to give an honorable mention to is Tyr. Do not let his title as a peacemaker fool you. Tyr is strong, wise, and very intelligent. He literally traveled to other worlds for fun. He's the guy who practically knows the most about the universe and each mythology, not just the Norse pantheon. Because of this very fact, he becomes the main plot point, driving the events of God of War Ragnarok. Tyr saw the inevitable destruction coming, and his greatest fears weren't just on the battlefield like Kratos. He played the long game with giants and conspired against Odin. But when we talk about Tyr, we have to talk about his physical design in the game as well, which gives him a lot of an advantage compared to the other gods. There are a few things I especially adore about Tyr's design. First is his height. He's taller than Kratos by quite a bit, which gives him an intimidating look. Standing next to the Ghost of Sparta and actually making Kratos look small is a feat in itself. His real power lies in the feat he achieved in the God of War universe. He's one of the only beings in existence capable of traveling between entirely different mythologies. We are talking about Greece, Egypt, Japan, and the Aztec lands. Tyr went literally everywhere. He collected artifacts, absorbed forgotten knowledge, and built his great temple in Midgard. The first look he gives to Kratos when he recognizes him is proof that even he went to Olympus after it was destroyed by the Ghost of Sparta. It would have been a hell of a great battle to see these two fight in their prime. I know we have Tyr's boss fight in Valhalla, but imagine taking on a Norse god of war, full strength. That would have been a joy to watch. If you want to know how terrifying a prime Tyr really is, just play the Valhalla DLC. Tyr is super hard to beat, especially in the last boss fight we have with him. He not only fights Kratos with his usual shield and sword, which is pretty famous if you have read Norse mythology, but he actually has a lot up his arsenal. Throughout the DLC, he seamlessly shifts his fighting style, pulling out weapons from his travels, a Japanese katana, a Mesoamerican maquahuitl, an Egyptian khopesh, and his classic spear and shield. Trying to predict his moves is pretty tough, and I had a really hard time beating him. And because of his peaceful demeanor and his soft-spoken accent, people often forget that he's an Aesir god. He possesses an insane level of durability and strength with that bloodline. There is even a moment where he casually catches a full-force punch from Kratos with one hand. He catches the fist that killed Zeus and flips the Temple of Tyr, and he does it with such ease that, in his prime, he would have been really scary. By the end of the fights, Kratos explicitly ranks Tyr as one of the most formidable and impressive adversaries he has ever faced in his entire life. In the story, Tyr's most famous and definitive feat was chaining Garm. Yes, the big wolf that is chained in Helheim. It was his doing. When this huge wolf was tearing through the realms, Odin, Thor, and all of them kept their distance. Tyr was literally the only god brave enough to step up and feed the beast every single day. Odin was terrified when he got to know that Garm was freed by Atreus. It was because he knew how dangerous Garm was. But how Tyr chained him was an impressive feat. When Garm grew too massive and the gods realized they had to bind him with the magical chain Gleipnir, the wolf wasn't stupid. Fenrir demanded that a god place their hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith while they put the chain on him. Every other god was too terrified. They were like, "Are you crazy? Why put my hand into a wolf's mouth that tears through realms?" But Tyr, fully knowing it was a trap, and fully knowing what it would cost him, his hand stepped forward and placed his right hand directly between the beast's jaws. When Garm realized the chain couldn't be broken, He closed his jaws. He literally bit off Tyr's arms. But everyone must be wondering how Tyr still has his arms fully intact. How? Well, he is a god. He grew it back. Also, Tyr's greatest feat of defiance was conspiring right under the Allfather's nose. He secretly helped the giants hide the path to Jotunheim to escape Odin's genocide, the reason why Atreus and Kratos had so many problems finding a way to Jotunheim. He was an Aesir god, but he earned the trust of giants, a race that hated the Aesir for centuries. Unlike his half-brother, Thor, who ruled through bloodlust and was known as the giant killer, Tyr had something Thor could never have: patience and control. Odin often took these traits of Tyr as weakness. Tyr is easily one of the strongest beings in Norse saga. The reason why I didn't include him in my official top 10 is that we never simply saw or heard much about his other feats. You know what I'm talking about if you have read actual Norse mythology. The game changes a bit from the original mythology to fit Kratos into the narrative, and I completely get it. But his version in the old Norse poems? That guy is something else entirely. If Santa Monica Studio had fully adapted that Tyr we see or hear from in the comics, he might have broken the entire power scaling of the game, and they had to severely buff Kratos to handle this guy. There is an old poem called Tyr, which usually accompanies Thor on a massive quest. They need to retrieve a kettle from the giant Hymir, who is actually Tyr's father in some versions of the myth. While Thor is always portrayed as this dude who does all the dirty work and is probably the strongest out of the two, it is Tyr who steps up there. You have to remember that Tyr wasn't just the god of war. He was the god of law, justice, and the assembly, known back then as the Thing. His responsibility was to maintain cosmic order. If gods ever made a treaty, Tyr was there as the judge. Tyr's presence in battle was so overpowering that ancient Viking warriors literally used his name as a medal of honor. In God of War Ragnarok, Kratos and Atreus end up dealing with the massive hellhound Garm. But in the original prophecies of Ragnarok, that fight was Tyr's. The old poems state that at the end of the world, Tyr is destined to go head-to-head with Garm, the monstrous wolf guarding the gates of the underworld. It is prophesied to be an apocalyptic clash of both titans, ending in a brutal mutual kill where both god and beast strike each other down in their final moments. Norse mythology has a snake giant that is on a completely different level. We are talking about a giant so massive that he wraps around the entire world, bites his own tail, and is so incredibly powerful that he literally clashed with Thor, and even the god of thunder couldn't kill him. His origin is one of the most fascinating aspects of the game. It literally involves time travel. In God of War Ragnarok, when Atreus sneaks out of Sindri's house to secretly talk with Freya, Sindri suggests he should speak with Jormungandr to get answers about Loki. Atreus calls the beast in the giant language. When Atreus asks for answers, Jormungandr gives him only one word before going back to sleep: Ironwood. Later in the game, the prophecy fulfills itself. While exploring Ironwood, Atreus and Angrboda find a large soulless snake that had its soul stolen by Angrboda's grandmother, Grilla. Using his new soul magic, Atreus revives the snake by placing a giant soul inside it, specifically the soul of a giant who already hated Thor and the Aesir. This is where the hatred for Thor and the other Aesir gods come from. The snake then leaves the place, and later, Angrboda reveals it is growing at a terrifying, unnatural rate. Atreus realizes the truth. He just created the world serpent. In the myths, there was a completely different story. Loki and Angrboda physically birth their 3 children. Fenrir, who clashes with Odin in Ragnarok. Hel, who is the ruler of the underworld. and Jormungandr as well. Mimir in the game also mentions that this monster just got out of nowhere and was found in the Lake of Nine. And since then, he has been there. There is no origin story because he was born in Ironwood by Loki, and he is trapped in an endless loop. During the apocalyptic events of Ragnarok, the young Jormungandr shows up in Asgard to fight Thor. During this battle, the serpent accidentally destroys the portal to Alfheim, blocking Kratos' reinforcements. Ultimately, Thor strikes the giant so hard with Mjolnir that it splinters the world tree Yggdrasil itself, and the serpent disappears. After Asgard is destroyed, Freya wonders why Jormungandr is still somehow present, sleeping in the Lake of Nine in Midgard. Mimir realizes the old myths were true. The serpent they saw get hit in Asgard was sent backwards in time to when he first appeared in the Lake of Nine centuries ago. Kratos suddenly recalls that Jormungandr found Atreus familiar when they first met in the 2018 game, realizing it was because Atreus was the one who gave him his soul. Mimir tells us that after the serpent was sent back in time, a younger version of Thor showed up at the Lake of Nine and attacked him again, and their battle ended in a draw. He fights Prime Thor during Ragnarok, takes a hit so hard it rips a hole in the fabric of time, lands in the distant past, and with very little time to recover. During the 2018 game, he is knocked out by Balder when Kratos and Atreus are inside the giant's belly. Is he weak? First, do not forget that Balder is no weakling by any sort. He's an invulnerable god. Second, and more importantly, the big boy probably didn't want to cause any internal harm to Kratos and the small boy who were literally inside of his stomach at the time. So he likely avoided going into a full combat mode to protect the very child who gave him life. Aside from his big body and his insane level of durability, he possesses something far more poisonous and effective against Aesir gods: Aether. Aether is a highly corrosive substance, poisonous enough to permanently damage and kill gods. Early in the 2018 game, when Kratos throws his Leviathan axe into the lake, Jormungandr swallows it and spits it back out, prompting a small notification on the screen: Aether imbued. That wasn't a cool Easter egg at all. It tied to the next game perfectly, and honestly, I didn't see that coming. When Kratos later slashes Thor across the belly in Ragnarok, that would never fully heal. For the rest of the game, the God of Thunder is walking around with an open belly purely because the world serpent blessed Kratos' axe with his lethal spit years prior. Then there is his strength, which he used to take down a fellow giant in the 2018 game. During the final battle against Balder, Freya loses her mind and uses her incredibly powerful Vanir magic to reanimate the frozen corpses of Thamur. For context, Thamur was a colossal frost giant whose dead body was literally a mountain range that Kratos and Atreus had to climb earlier in the story. But Atreus calls in the world serpent, and Jormungandr comes out of the frozen lake and effortlessly overpowers Thamur. At number 9, we have Balder, the one immortal god who feels nothing. He is the embodiment of durability. All he wants is just to feel one last time. Kratos and Balder's fight in the 2018 game might be the best in the Norse saga. They go all out at each other, and Kratos is completely shocked by the strength and durability of Balder. It has been years since Kratos really felt this way, backed into a corner by an opponent who simply refuses to stay down. In the 2018 God of War, Balder is presented as Kratos' most persistent and dangerous physical threat since his bloody campaign in Greece. While he completely lacks the sheer mass of the Greek titans, his power is something far more terrifying: immortality and feeling absolutely nothing. When we first meet Balder, he doesn't look like much. He is lean, barefoot, and completely unarmed. But the second he lands that first blow, Kratos understands one thing. He can't take him lightly. He goes all out against him. Baldur's physical strength is roughly equal to Kratos's, making him one of the few beings in existence capable of going toe-to-toe with the ghost of Sparta himself. During that opening stranger fight, he casually knocks Kratos straight over the roof of his own house with a single, effortless punch. Later in that same brawl, he lifts a massive building-sized piece of stone and slams it down onto Kratos. The only reason Baldur even went to search the house was because Odin promised to break his vulnerability curse, and he heard there was a giant living there. My innocent Baldur thought that the giants could finally make him feel once again. Kratos and Baldur go all out, punching each other ruthlessly, and even after Kratos apparently kills him by a series of heavy punches and attacks and throws him over a cliff, this guy comes back as if nothing ever happened, and his biggest feat would be punching Jormungandr and knocking him down, a creature that literally encircles the entire planet, with just 3 heavy blows. Also, he is seen controlling a massive dragon, mounting him and controlling him. However, Baldur's true strength is not in how hard he hits or how fast he is. It's that in 99% of the game, he has no health bar. Because of his mother, Freya's protective Vanir magic, Baldur is blessed with invulnerability to all threats, physical or magical. He can be stabbed through the chest, have his neck snapped by Kratos, be crushed by boulders, or be thrown off cliffs, and he simply regenerates instantly. Because he cannot feel pain or physical fatigue, he has literally infinite stamina. He never slows down. He never breathes heavily. In the final apocalyptic battle, he fights through a combined effort of Kratos and Atreus. This curse also gives him a terrifying psychological advantage. His inability to feel anything makes him completely fearless. He fights with a reckless brawling style because he has literally zero reason to block, parry, or dodge. He just takes Kratos' heavy attacks with ease and brushes them off. The tragedy of Baldur is that his invulnerability actually locked away a massive portion of his true combat potential. Once Atreus' mistletoe finally breaks the spell and Baldur can feel again, we see that he is actually capable of high-level absorption and manipulation. What this means is that we can see during the final battle, he can use his body to cover it in ice or in fire at will. It allows him to completely absorb Kratos' elemental attacks, like the freezing ice of the Leviathan axe or the fire of the Blades of Chaos, if the element matches, and then throw them back at him in the form of shockwaves. Furthermore, as the Norse god of light, he possesses extreme speed, which makes it even more difficult to deal with him. When you look at the stats, Baldur is definitely a high-tier Aesir god. While he might lack the raw chaotic strength of Thor or the complex magic of Odin, his vulnerability made him unique. Even Odin said that Baldur had value. Kratos only defeats Baldur by exploiting a highly specific magical loophole, the mistletoe arrow. In a completely fair fight to the death without that plot armor, Baldur would have eventually won. I'm not saying this because he's a better fighter than Kratos, but simply because he cannot die, and even the ghost of Sparta eventually gets tired. At number 8 is Freya. She stands out as one of the most powerful beings in the entire God of War universe. Her strength comes from a completely unique blend of Valkyrie combat skills and total mastery over Vanir magic. The 2018 version of Freya is merely a shallow version of her old Valkyrie version. Before she was bound by Odin to stay in Midgard forever, she was the Queen of Valkyries and insanely powerful, which we can see hints of in Ragnarok, and in the end, she kinda reaches that same power level. She holds the combined powers and combat experience of every other Valkyrie you fight in the game, including nightmares such as Sigrun and Na. This gives her extreme speed, the ability to fly, and an elite level of mastery over swords and bows. She even has sigil arrows, which were really helpful when navigating the world. Along with her physical strength, she is a master of magic, which is probably the strongest weapon in her arsenal. She can pull off incredible feats that even Odin cannot replicate. During the final Baldur battle of the 2018 game, she successfully reanimated the colossal frozen corpse of the giant Thamma. She controlled this massive giant to fight Kratos and Baldur simultaneously, and she did all of that while still suffering under a magical curse on her by Odin. She can literally send people out of different realms. At one point in the lore, she cast a spell so powerful that it forcefully took both her and Thor all the way from Jotunheim back to Asgard in an instant. You might wonder how someone this powerful ended up trapped in the woods of Midgard. Freya and Odin were originally married to create a peace treaty and end the bloody Aesir-Vanir war. As time passed, Odin grew incredibly paranoid about the coming destruction of Ragnarok. He became obsessed with learning the hidden secrets of life and death. He demanded that Freya teach him the old magic and the exact invulnerability spell she used to protect Baldur. Freya knew his intentions and refused his demands. This rejection enraged the Allfather. Odin knew Freya's powers were broken. He avoided clashing her in a direct fair fight because he knew the risk was too massive for his own life. To neutralize her, he exploited her emotional vulnerabilities and instead hit her with a curse. He stripped her of her warrior spirit. This is why she repeatedly says she can't fight and isn't at her full power, because of this very curse. Odin was wise. This specific magic prevented her from harming any living thing or even defending herself. He then ripped away her Valkyrie wings and bound her permanently to Midgard. Odin designed this punishment so she would be eternally exiled and completely unable to seek revenge against him. As a Valkyrie, she possesses true immortality due to her spiritual nature. She survives catastrophic physical damage that would instantly kill any other god. She uses high-level telekinesis and uses her will to change anything literally. She also shapeshifts into a falcon to travel across the realms. She has some really unique abilities as well. Her connection to nature gives her an ability called psychometry. The land of Vanaheim is alive to her. The woods and fields literally speak to her, which is exactly how she tracked Baldur's movements in Midgard. She can also analyze anyone and can deduce some key information about them. The first time we meet her in the woods, Atreus shoots Hilda's Vinny by mistake, and the first look she had at Kratos, she recognized what kind of monster he was. This level of sixth sense is pretty incredible. Even the smartest man alive wasn't able to guess Kratos' true nature. She also looked at Atreus and instantly knew that his sickness came from his own divine nature fighting his mortal mind. Her physical strength is something to behold as well. During the ancient wars, she led the Vanir forces and completely stopped the Aesir army for centuries. Ymir even calls her Odin's deadliest enemy. Her speed is infinite in combat. She was easily able to keep up with both Kratos and Atreus at the same time. As the true queen of Valkyries, she overpowers even the strongest Valkyries like Sigrun and Na. Even her lifting strength is immense. Valkyries have the power to tear the fabric of a realm apart and make the world tree bleed. She physically ripped apart the massive roots of Yggdrasil with her bare hands to destroy Odin's curse. She also interacts directly with realm tears, which are literal holes ripped in the fabric of reality itself, and closes them using pure strength and magic. With all this strength, she is durable as well. She withstands direct hits from Nidhogg, which is one of the strongest dragons in mythology, and she even took hits from the new Valkyrie queen, Na, and even survived being hit by Kratos' Leviathan axe. Freya has her own set of iconic weapons. She has a beautiful but deadly sword, model, which Odin himself gifted her on their wedding day. She uses it to channel it with her Bifrost magic. She also has her Vanir sword, Throngva, which uses Seor magic. Her main weapon is probably her magical bow. She fires Sigil and Sonic Arrow to trigger elemental explosions across the battlefield. Throughout the first game, Freya acts as a guiding light. She helps Kratos and Atreus on their brutal journey, saving the boy's life and teaching them how to navigate the realms. But the revelation drops that Baldur, the immortal guy who has been chasing Kratos and Atreus since the start of their journey, is none other than Freya's own son. And she isn't just a normal witch living in the woods. She is the Valkyrie Queen herself and the wife of Odin. Baldur, on the other hand, is hell-bent on killing Kratos, but even more so, he is obsessed with seeking revenge from his own mother for stripping him of his feelings. He says he has waited many winters and many years to finally kill her. He never forgave her. In the end, when he finally gets the opportunity to take his revenge, he then tries to strangle Freya. But Kratos, seeing this, remembers his past and vows to stop this bloody cycle of children killing their own parents for revenge. He warns Baldur, but he never listened. He was one stubborn guy. And finally, Kratos had to kill him. This grief hit Freya severely. Her entire personality changed, and the only purpose she had left was to take revenge on Kratos for killing her beloved son. She vowed Kratos that she would chase Kratos to the ends of the world. She would never forgive him, even though Kratos did what he had to do to save her. But a mother, witnessing her child die right in her arms, that is a tragedy she can't forget. Time flies by, even after 3 long years. She was still hunting Kratos. And this is where we see her strength. She is not just any enemy that Kratos can simply kill and walk away. She was far more formidable. And with time, Kratos convinced Freya to finally forgive him and be his ally. Their journey was incredible. To gain her full power back, and most importantly, her warrior spirit, and as I mentioned, she defeats Nidhogg and breaks the curse. She is a key part of the whole Ragnarok Kratos and Atreus plans throughout the game. During the climax in Asgard, Freya crafts a binding spell using the exact magical rope Odin once used to hang himself from the World Tree. This spell is incredibly powerful. It forces the Allfather to kneel down in front of her, a feat almost nobody else in the universe could pull off. Freya possesses genius-level intellect as well. She is the one who personally taught Seor magic to the Aesir gods in the first place. She casts complex spells instantly, using simple hand gestures and ancient words. Her only real weakness was her blinding grief over Baldur. Once she accepted the truth and reconciled with Kratos, she aimed all of her lethal power directly at Odin. By the end of the saga, she stands tall as the true queen of the realms, and she even helped Kratos rebuild the very universe she helped save. Let's be honest, Hades is easily the most underrated of the 3 brothers. He has always been overlooked. When the original trio defeated Kronos and divided the world, Zeus eagerly took the bright skies, Poseidon claimed the vast seas, and they handed the absolute least amusing job to Hades. He became the eternal king of the underworld, trapped in the dark while his brothers enjoyed their throne. But his arc is definitely my favorite. He wields a massive, incredibly cool weapon, possesses an amazing storyline, and boasts a terrifying visual design. It is time to let my boy get his flowers.
I will see you suffer as I have suffered.
That, right there, is my personal favorite dialogue. His goal is to break Kratos to make him feel what he feels. His story is much more emotional and personal with Kratos. Unlike his brothers, who want to kill Kratos because Kratos is after them, Hades has a much more personal reason. During the events of the prequel game, Chains of Olympus, Persephone became incredibly bitter. She hated being forced to marry Hades and hated being abandoned in the dark by the other Olympian gods. She became so angry that she actually allied herself with the imprisoned Titan Atlas. Her plan was to completely destroy the Pillar of the World, an act that would have ended all of existence, including her own life. She just wanted the pain to stop. To save the world, Kratos used the massive gauntlet of Zeus and the blinding light of Helios to weaken her, eventually smashing her to death. Her body exploded, forcing Atlas to step in and hold up the weight of the world forever. When Kratos finally meets Hades in God of War 3, Kratos sees Persephone's preserved corpse in a beautiful coffin right inside Hades' throne room. Hades isn't just fighting to protect Olympus like his brothers. He is fighting to avenge the broken heart. Kratos murdered the only thing Hades ever loved, and Hades fully intended to tear the Spartan's soul apart, piece by piece, giving him an agonizing death. In traditional Greek myths, Persephone never actually dies. She follows a beautiful seasonal cycle. Hades tricked her into eating a few simple pomegranate seeds, which magically bound her to the underworld. Because of this, she spends 1/3 of her year ruling as the queen with Hades, and the rest of the year she spends in the sun with her mother. Her time in the dark simply represents the cold winter before the earth is reborn in the spring. What makes him incredibly strong is his authority over every soul. He fights using the claws of Hades attached to chains. During the First World War, he used these weapons to do something unimaginable. While Poseidon was using lightning to paralyze the massive Titan General Atlas, Hades threw his claws and ripped the soul straight out of Atlas's body. He absorbed the Titan's raw strength into himself, which explains why he is so insanely strong. Hades grows stronger and stronger with every soul he claims. He has spent thousands of years taking souls of every dead mortal and monster in the Greek world. He also possesses a form of regenerative immortality. During his fight with Kratos, he was repeatedly stabbed directly in the head. Kratos even took a chunk of flesh off his body, but Hades barely flinched. He simply used his dark telekinesis to pull the severed meat right back onto his bones, healing instantly. The creepiest part about his powers is his complete control over the dead. He can summon infinite hordes of undead soldiers and command them to fight for him, and even rain big fireballs of hellfire down from the sky to incinerate entire armies. If you look back at the Greek mythology, Hades is known as the Unseen One. He was a stern but incredibly just judge of the underworld who rarely ever left his dark realm. In the old myths, his greatest weapon wasn't a set of chained blades which we see in the game he uses. His most powerful weapon was the Helm of Darkness, a magical helmet that granted him total invisibility. During the war against the Titans, Hades put on this helmet and got directly into the heavily guarded Titan war camp unseen, and completely destroyed all their weapons from the inside. The act of stealth essentially won the Great War for the Olympians. He was not this stubborn, revenge-filled god we see in God of War. He was solely responsible for his duty in the underworld and never came out of it. He was also famous for his trickery. When arrogant mortal heroes like Theseus and Pirithous traveled to the underworld to try to kidnap his wife, Hades didn't fight them. He simply invited them to sit down for a feast. The moment they sat, the magical chairs of forgetfulness bound them permanently to the stone. He was a proper badass. Because Kratos took everything from him, Hades holds absolutely nothing back in their final fight. When we look past his lore and his feats in the Great War, he was a really terrifying god, one that everyone feared. He is always present through the darkness. His magic works passively. He is the glue that keeps billions of souls bound to the realm, and the moment he dies, without his physical presence, the entire underworld is thrown into chaos where all the souls escaped and roamed freely. We know he can rip your soul out, but he can also completely destroy your mind. Hades holds total control over the river Lethe. If he uses those waters, he can erase a person's memory entirely from existence. He also commands the river Styx, whose waters instantly kill anyone who takes a drink. He possesses a terrifying level of status effect manipulation. He can induce magical comas, famously putting the barbarian Ulric's father into an endless sleep. He even trapped heroes like Pirithous in the underworld. His elemental control is completely chaotic as well. Hades can literally breathe raw Tartarus energy from his mouth. He can shroud his entire surrounding area in pitch black darkness and forge heavy metal chains out of pure shadows to pierce his enemies. At any moment, he can make the very ground around him constantly burst into flames. The underworld and the mortal world are not just different places. They are entirely separate space-time continuums. Hades casually teleports back and forth between them. If you manage to survive his magic, you still have to deal with his raw power. During the Great War, he grappled with Kratos, a literal titan. His lifting strength is immeasurable as well. And finally, he is pretty fast for a big guy like him. He easily kept up with a prime Kratos. During his battle with Atlas, Hades casually reacted to and jumped right over the high-speed projectiles the Titan threw at him. Furthermore, he possesses truly infinite stamina. In the God of War universe, a god's magic is the direct source of their physical attributes. Because his magical reserves are endless, he never experiences physical fatigue or mental exhaustion. He can trap your mind, explode your head with sound, breathe pure underworld energy, and fight forever. Well, you can argue in terms of pure strength. Hades might be the strongest of the trio, but the official novel states that Hades was the third most powerful out of these three brothers. Remember, the arrogant introduction right at the beginning of God of War 3 sets the tone for exactly who Kratos is dealing with. Poseidon is the Olympian god of the seas, rivers, water, storms, and the ruler of Atlantis and all the oceans. Alongside his brothers, Zeus and Hades, the three kings of Olympus, they are the strongest gods in the entire Greek pantheon, and together, they ruled the world. He was also eaten by his father because of the prophecy I discussed earlier. During the Great War, after being freed from Kronos' stomach, his feat was literally summoning every single body of water in the entire world, every ocean, lake, and river, condensing it all and using it to drown and overpower the massive titan Oceanus. When the Titans attempted their second siege of Olympus in God of War 3, Poseidon acts as the mountain and the most lethal line of defense. He effortlessly kills massive titans like Epimetheus by literally diving straight through their chests, and he uses his watery beasts to rip the other titans off the side of the mountain. What's interesting to note here is that, while fighting him, Kratos was literally fighting the ocean itself. He transforms into a colossal, towering water giant. While he is in water, he is unbeatable. His strength is immeasurable. The claws and heads of his sea stallion monsters are literal extensions of his own body. With these, he was effortlessly able to restrain Gaia, the primordial mother of Earth, and drag her down. His strike strength in this form allows him to even block Gaia's punches with ease. He takes repeated attacks from a fully enraged Kratos, which is a big deal in itself. Well, I agree we haven't seen much of his fights in the game, but the official God of War 3 novelization takes his power to a completely different level. The book describes his powers and magical limits in detail and explains why he is goated. Mount Olympus was an impenetrable divine fortress by God's magic. During the Great Siege, the Titans threw mountain-sized rocks at the palace walls, but the Olympian marble walls didn't get damaged at all. But when Poseidon actually placed his trident on those same palace walls, it broke instantly. Even without trying, he applied more force in that small point than a Titan did by throwing a whole mountain. Poseidon controls most of the world, and his power is tied directly to the Earth itself. Because of this, his emotions can affect the planet's stability. When he gets frustrated, even his voice can make the ground shake. In the story, Just raising his fist caused a massive earthquake across the world. His anger is overwhelming and destructive. It's like a force of nature that can't be stopped. Because he is a force of nature. If he loses control, he could cause massive destruction if he is in a bad mood. The game shows Poseidon driving off a mountain to attack the Titans, but the novel explains just how terrifying that impact really is. From high above, he launches himself downward using the weight of the entire ocean. He turns his body into a living weapon. Epimetheus was a powerful war titan built to withstand extreme damage, but Poseidon's focused strike completely destroyed his chest. He tore through his armor, killing him instantly. This moment shows the massive power gap between a top Olympian and even a strong titan. That overwhelming physical dominance of Poseidon is only part of what makes him so terrifying, because once you look past his brute force strength and durability, his control over electricity is really amazing. He channels raw electricity through his trident. During the Great War, he unleashed that power on Atlas, one of the strongest titans alive. That blast paralyzed Atlas and even forced his soul out of alignment with his body. That moment created the opening for Hades to step in and tear the soul away. At that very level, Poseidon's lightning tears through magical defenses, deconstructs and reduces souls. The most terrifying part about him is that, like every god in the Greek saga, their death had an impact on the world, which it never recovered from. Because he embodies the oceans and seas, his life is sort of a dam, which is holding back chaos. After Kratos brutally beats him to death and takes his eyes out, Poseidon falls from Olympus and crashes into the sea below. His death instantly causes the oceans to lose their master. The water wreaks absolute havoc, unleashing a worldwide flood that drowns almost all mortal life in the Greek world in just a matter of seconds. He was also a victim of Pandora's box, corrupted by the evil of anger. But even corrupted, blind, and beaten, Poseidon was a force of nature that only the Ghost of Sparta could beat. Before moving into our top 5, I would like to give an honorable mention to Athena. She was the goddess of wisdom for a very good reason. Even years after the destruction of Olympus and settling in a completely different mythology, Kratos simply couldn't move on from the thought of her. She was undeniably one of the most brilliant and ultimately manipulative characters in the entire series. Of all the gods on Mount Olympus in the God of War series, Athena was arguably the least selfish and was in fact very noble, putting everyone else before herself, as was displayed not only by her deep love for her people and her horror of Ares' siege on Athens, but also her deep concern and love for the rest of humanity. As shown in God of War 3, she stated that she intended to liberate mankind with the power of hope. She also was seen loving her family, particularly her father Zeus, deeply, and even sacrificed her own life to save him. Although it is possible that she only did so to save the world, as the death of Zeus would have meant the death of Olympus and thus the destruction of the entire world. Athena even cared greatly for Kratos, whom she knew as her half-brother, despite his violent nature and reputation and his earlier attack on one of her villages under Ares' servitude. She saved his life when he was a young boy when Ares attempted to kill him after he retaliated when Deimos was being taken away and apologized to him for doing so, elevated him as a god, shielded him from Olympus's wrath, always wanted to help and guide him on his quests, and remains his closest ally in all of the games, and continued watching over him even after he fell out of Olympus and lost his status as a god. According to the official God of War 1 novel, she always wanted Kratos to get freedom from his nightmares. She was tricked by Zeus into believing forgiveness would end his visions, and she tries her best to convince Zeus. She saves him from suicide. If he had committed suicide, not only would he still suffer from his nightmares in the underworld, but he would also be tortured by Hades. But in God of War 3, her motives somewhat changed. For some reason, She desired the death of Zeus and motivated Kratos' quest for vengeance. It was possible that she was affected by the evil greed when Kratos opened Pandora's box, which changed her motives to personal gain. However, she did not show any sign of that evil in God of War 2 while she was alive, indicating she was resisting it with all she had until her death. However, according to the novelization of God of War 2, she noticed she was becoming irrational as of late and was losing control over herself. She also claimed to have had a message for humanity. The possible reason for her sudden greed could be her corruption by the powers of higher existence, which could have been further fueled by the evils. It was unknown what she ultimately had in mind, but most likely she wished the destruction of the Olympians so that she could rebuild the world and rule mankind as its sole, most powerful being. Furthermore, according to Erin Torpe, Athena's voice actress for God of War 3, she considered Athena as trying to do some good to the world, but ultimately wants to take it over, which further lent to the possibility that she was not as pure as she presented herself to be. And about her powers, who would know more than the series director himself? If you want to believe the creators like Cory Barlog, Athena is currently a higher being with greater powers than everyone else left in the lore. In fact, this higher existence plot was Barlog's most important narrative thread. So logically, I'd expect her to be the most fundamentally powerful entity moving forward. It always felt like a missed opportunity that we never got to see her base form truly fighting on screen. She is ridiculously badass in the original mythology. She doesn't fear Typhon. She throws the island of Sicily directly onto a giant to crush them, and she literally skins a giant alive to make her own armor. As the goddess of wisdom, her base power was already terrifying, easily rivaling Ares, but she reached a whole new level of immortality after sacrificing herself for Zeus. In her base form, her combat speed matched even the fastest gods like Zeus. She could descend from Mount Olympus to Athens in just a speed of thought. She even restrained Hades from pushing Poseidon and even blocked a blow from the blade of Olympus when Kratos swung it. Her most definitive trait, however, is her intelligence. She was a genius and had the true power of foresight. When Ares attacked Athens, she figured out his plan long before any other Olympian could. She tricked Ares, gained control of Kratos, trained him for a decade, and strategized the god of war. She possessed telekinesis, lifting Kratos and Pandora with ease, invisibility, and teleportation. She used transmutation to turn women into gorgons, and could shapeshift into any form she saw fit. She could also possess inanimate objects, frequently speaking with Kratos through statues. Once she ascended, she became completely immortal and intangible. She could phase through objects and become tangible only at will. She exists on a higher dimensional plane than even Zeus or Gaia. She was the mind holding the pantheon together. By the end of the Greek era, she was technically one of the most powerful entities left, a god even the ghost of Sparta couldn't truly kill. And to understand why she is so strong, we have to look at the nature of her strength. This is what set her apart from the rest of the Olympian gods. Unlike the other gods, who had physical bodies, Athena became a being of pure energy and thought. She achieved true immortality. Kratos' weapons, even the legendary blades of Olympus, could not harm or touch her in this state. We see how each god was corrupted by the evils from Pandora's box. Zeus by fear, Poseidon by anger, and Hercules by jealousy. Athena's corruption was far hidden. She was corrupted with greed or ambition. This evil manifested brilliantly in her evil master plan. She lets Kratos destroy the other gods so she can step in as the sole goddess and rebuild this world. She never helped Kratos. She turned him into her personal weapon, one she used. This is why when she appears as a vision to Kratos, she casually speaks to him saying, "You are still a monster," to which he replies, "But I am your monster no longer." Kratos, after all the years of blindly following her, finally realized that she was the one pulling the strings from behind. She tasked him with defeating Ares. She removed his sibling rival and placed her own chosen warrior on the throne of war. When Kratos fell into the underworld of God of War 3, his weapons were destroyed, and Athena transformed the Blades of Athena into Blades of Exile. This shows her ability to manipulate divine weapons and bless them with magic. In mythology, her role was different. Athena not only helped the hero Perseus kill Medusa, but she also took the severed head and mounted it onto her shield, the Aegis. This gave her the power of victory. Any enemy who looked at her in battle would instantly turn to stone. It was almost impossible to engage in direct combat with her. When you compare Zeus and Athena, no doubt Zeus is far more powerful, but Athena was far more dangerous because she controlled the narrative. Zeus reacted to this fear by blindly trying to kill Kratos. Athena instead used Kratos' blinding rage to clear all of her enemies, including Zeus. Everything was going according to her plan. Then Kratos, after defeating Zeus, released the power of hope to humanity at the end of God of War 3. He did all this to tell her he is no longer her pawn. He realized this was the only way to prevent Athena from becoming a dictator and to release this power. Even years later, she remains a threat. In the God of War lore, Athena is the only Greek god who still actively speaks to Kratos' mind across entirely different mythologies, appearing in his vision in the Norse realms just to remind him that he will always be a monster. You can leave Greece, but you can never truly leave Athena. Ares is almost universally depicted as a symbol of strength in battle. There are countless depictions of him in movies and shows, and he is always shown as a brave, ruthless warrior who never backs down from a fight. My personal version outside of the God of War games is the DC Comics iteration. He literally fights toe-to-toe with Darkseid, a multiversal threat so powerful that he takes down the entire Justice League single-handedly. But getting back to the God of War universe, Ares isn't just a strong warrior. He is the literal foundation of the franchise's lore, because he was the reason the Ghost of Sparta title even exists. In the series' lore, Ares did not earn the title of God of War through a trial or a conquest, or like Kratos, who killed him to take his place as the God of War. Rather, he was born with it as a right. As the eldest son of Zeus and Hera, he was born directly into the aftermath of the Titanomachy, the great war between the gods and the Titans. During this conflict, Ares was his father's primary champion and warrior. He helped establish Olympian rule by violently destroying Titans and ancient monsters. Following the victory, Zeus established the 12 Olympians as the rulers of Greece. As the natural-born warrior of the family, Ares was officially granted control over war, violence, and bloodlust, taking his rightful seat on Mount Olympus. However, despite his elite status, he was widely despised by almost all the other gods and mortals for his uncontrollable cruelty and sadism. He was a weapon that couldn't be destroyed. Even Zeus left him as he was, because fighting Ares head-on was something they couldn't afford. This kind of isolation deeply fueled his ambition. He didn't just want to be a general to control the world, nor did he want to be the God of War who helps people. His sole purpose was to overthrow Zeus and take the throne of Olympus entirely for himself. Ares is the sole reason Kratos became the monster that he is. A prophecy was that a marked warrior would eventually bring an end to the rule of the gods and destroy Olympus. Believing this warrior was Kratos' younger brother, Deimos, because of his strange birthmarks, Ares and Athena traveled directly to Sparta. Ares imprisoned him forever in the domain of death. Young Kratos tried to attack the God of War to save his brother. Ares also hit Kratos in the right eye. The mark we see is in his skin even now. Ares was fully prepared to kill the boy right there, but Athena stopped him. She reminded her brother that they only came for the marked target, and Ares left with Deimos in hand. Ares then forged the Blades of Chaos and made Kratos his marked warrior. Years later, Kratos found himself on the losing end of a bloody war. Outnumbered and at the mercy of the barbarian king, Kratos screamed to the heavens. He offered his life and eternal servitude to Ares in exchange for victory. Ares accepted the deal. He unleashed his terrifying powers, dropping from the sky to viciously destroy the entire barbarian horde in seconds. He then gave Kratos the Blades of Chaos, searing the chains into the Spartan's flesh as a permanent symbol of the atrocious deal Kratos had made with Ares. Under the god of war's command, Kratos and his soldiers conquered much of Greece, slaughtering thousands in their master's name. But as I mentioned, Ares had a treasonous master plan. As revealed in God of War, Ascension, Ares wanted to overthrow Mount Olympus. To do this, he needed a warrior powerful enough to tear down the very walls of the gods. He decided to strip away Kratos' humanity and turn him into death itself. Ares sent Kratos to attack a village dedicated to Athena. In a blind blood rage planned by the god of war, Kratos stormed the temple and slaughtered everything inside. He then soon realized he had murdered his own wife and daughter. 10 years later, Ares decided to completely humiliate his sister Athena. He attacked the sacred city. He led an army of undead monsters and laid siege to Athens. He was so overwhelmingly powerful that when Kratos arrived, fueled by pure blinding hatred, even the ghost of Sparta had to hide. Because Zeus strictly forbade the gods from fighting each other, Athena had to send Kratos to do the impossible task. But Kratos knew that stepping up to Ares as a mortal was suicide. He walked across the dangerous desert of lost souls just to find Pandora's box. Ares was so strong that he was one of those gods who quite literally killed Kratos. While standing in the ruined streets of Athens, Ares used his god powers to sense Kratos finding the box miles and miles away. The god of war picks up a massive cone-shaped piece of stone. He throws it with such devastating force that it flies entirely across the desert and breaches the heavily fortified temple of Pandora and instantly impales Kratos to the wall. And this was the first time Kratos actually dies. Ares sends his harpies to bring back the box, but his mistake in underestimating Kratos is what led to his downfall later. When Kratos returns, he takes the box out of Ares' hands and uses its ancient magic to grow to the exact size of the war god. Ares shows Kratos that there are levels to this. He transforms into his final form, but Ares is far more than just a physical powerhouse. When Kratos actually starts matching his sword strikes, Ares decides to flex his divine powers. With his godly magic, Ares pulls Kratos into a twisted dimension. Inside this illusion world, Ares psychologically breaks the Spartan, and he then forces Kratos to defend fake versions of his dead family against an endless army of Kratos clones. And when Kratos survives that torture, he shows Kratos this total control over his creation, and he rips the Blades of Chaos straight off of Kratos' arms. Kratos is left defenseless, dropping to his knees. Ares approaches him to deliver the final blow, but Kratos survived. After a long fight, Kratos looks at the god that ruined his life and says, "You succeeded," before finally killing him. He is one of those gods that really pushed Kratos to his limits. Many might argue that Poseidon and Hades might be stronger than Ares, but they never managed to kill Kratos. Ares did and pushed his limits. If it wasn't for the plot armor of Kratos, it would have been game over. Even after death, Ares' powers were something to behold. A huge nuclear-level explosion happens directly from the former god of war's body, and it almost destroys Athens. His raw abilities were what made him so strong. If you look at his abilities, you will understand what level Ares was on. He brings a different level of chaos to the battlefield. He holds a set of powers that makes him almost unbeatable in a straight fight. Ares embodies the very concept of war. Because of this status, he knows every single fighting style, martial art, and battle tactic across all of time. He completely masters every weapon the very moment he touches it. His physical stamina never runs out because of his magical energy. He can fight for days without getting fatigued, mentally or physically. How can you fight such a powerful being? He controls the flow of war in every way. He can teleport anywhere in just a flash and instantly respawn entire hordes of undead legionaries and mythical harpies right on top of his enemies. Even worse, the longer a fight lasts, the deadlier he gets. His raw power and speed actually accelerates the longer he stays in combat, growing roughly 20% stronger with every passing minute he spends fighting. If you talk about his physical form, it is literally built purely for destruction. His hair is made of literal burning fire. He can summon massive walls of flames, exploding volcanic rocks, and magma directly from the earth. He also possesses terrifying control over his own body, growing 6 massive bladed spider arms out of his back. He can stretch these limbs to any length, even impaling his targets. His healing factor is so strong that when he was stabbed completely through the stomach by one of his own spider arms, he healed the massive hole instantly. He also uses the fires of Ares. These special flames are highly toxic and completely cancel out the enemy's healing abilities. When he burned Kratos with this fire, it completely stopped the Spartan's natural regeneration, leaving a deeply sore, agonizing injury. His most broken ability is his control over reality. Ares can drag you into a delusional world, which he did with Kratos. Inside this trap, Ares makes all the rules. He completely strips away your magical powers, steals your weapons out of your hands, and creates endless perfect clones of you to beat you down. He turns your own strength against you while leaving you totally defenseless. When you rank these stats, he is surely stronger than almost all of the Greek gods. His raw lifting strength even overpowers titans, and this one roar in anger creates huge shockwaves that are powerful enough to shake both earth and heaven. But his only weakness was his arrogance. He is a self-centered guy and underestimates his opponents. If he had planned the battle with Kratos a bit better, and maybe not underestimated him, the results could have been different. At number 4, we have who might be physically the strongest god to ever exist. A god that is so powerful that he dominates Kratos in a 1v1 fight. His single Mjolnir strike wreaks havoc, and he can destroy the whole surrounding with a single strike of his hammer. Well, we are used to that dashing, handsome Thor from Marvel Comics, don't get me wrong. That one is a powerhouse in itself. He fought Thanos and even damaged him. He also is strong and worthy in Marvel. But this one in God of War, he is on a completely different level. He is ruthless, dangerous, and most importantly, he strikes without any fear. He erased a whole race single-handedly, fought Faye and Jormungandr, who are considered the strongest giants. Thor Odinson is the most powerful warrior in the Norse pantheon. While he ranks second only to Odin in political status, he vastly surpasses the Allfather in raw, destructive physical might. Known across the 9 realms as the Destroyer and Asgard's primary enforcer, his feats are legendary purely for their terrifying scale. Most of his history involves the shattering of entire landscapes, like in Midgard, where Kratos and Thor fought, and in Vanaheim, where he clashed with Faye, and the mass genocide of the giants. The reason for his immense power is his lineage. He is a half-god and half-giant. Thor is the son of Odin, and the giantess Fjorgyn. This mixed heritage makes him half-giant, though he spent his entire life rejecting that half by slaughtering his own race. He was raised in a highly abusive, toxic environment. Odin used constant fear and manipulation to turn Thor into a tool of war. He used Thor as an executioner. The lore strongly implies that Fjorgyn actually died giving birth to Thor, stating that, for her gift of life, her life was claimed. Whether it was childbirth or a tragic accident involving his powers when he was young, one thing is certain. Odin blamed Thor for her death, and he never let his son forget it. Hatred of the giants was instilled in him, yet another part of Odin's plan to break his son's spirit and use this against him. Following his mother's death, Thor rejects this mother's heritage and fully embraced his destiny as the champion of the Aesir. After being bestowed the legendary hammer Mjolnir, a super weapon crafted by the dwarven brothers Brok and Sindri, Thor became an unstoppable force of nature. The half-giant, half-god Thor made a terrifying name for himself as the Destroyer and the right hand of Odin. Jormungandr was the one who gave him the toughest fight. Their clash was so violent it literally shook the realm. Destined to kill the world's serpents during the apocalyptic events of Ragnarok, Thor was widely considered the most powerful of Odin's sons and the symbol of the Aesir's rampage against Jotnar. Serving as Odin's right hand and primary executioner, he was typically sent as the Allfather's envoy whenever pure intimidation was required. When Odin wanted a problem solved, he just sent the god of thunder on it to do all the dirty work for him. His feats in the God of War's universe are incredible. Even before we see him, we can feel his aura. Everyone just can't stop talking about how powerful he is, and especially how ruthless he can be at times. Before Kratos ever arrived in Midgard, Thor met his wife in Vanaheim. He got into a massive brawl with Laufey the Just, or we can just call her Faye, Kratos' wife. The two of them fought so fiercely that they completely destroyed the entire valley around them. Their raw power was so perfectly matched that their weapons clashing actually created a massive permanent bolt of frozen lightning right in the middle of the crater. The fight ended in a dead stalemate. This highlights exactly how terrifying Faye and Thor were, but it also shows the catastrophic environmental damage Thor causes just by swinging his hammer. Then there is Thamur, a giant so big that his dead body literally forms a mountain range Kratos has to climb. When Thamur came to Midgard looking for his son, Thor attacked him. During the fight, Thor hit the giant so incredibly hard that Thamur lost his balance, fell, and hit his own head directly on his chisel. The giant's falling body completely crushed a local fishing village. For years, Thor bragged about this, acting like he planned the village destruction like some tactical genius. However, Mimir famously called him out on it, saying it was just a blind luck, but nonetheless, killing a giant like this is a pretty big deal in itself. In myths, he is even crazier. Thor is brutal, especially when his ego is hurt. Once, the giant king Thrym managed to steal Mjolnir while the thunder god was sleeping. To get his beloved hammer back, Thor and Freya got into Jotunheim and crashed Thrym's wedding feast. The second the giant king brought out the hammer during the ceremony, Thor grabbed it and completely lost his mind. He instantly smashed Thrym's skull and started mindlessly slaughtering every single giant attending the wedding. The massacre was so extreme that Freya had to forcefully cast a spell to teleport them back to Asgard just to stop the bloodshed. Thor's raw strength is insane. During a drunken night in Asgard, Odin invited the stone giant Hrungnir over just to mock him for the amusement of the court. When Thor walked in and heard the giant, he was not exactly amused. He simply walked up and slammed Mjolnir into Hrungnir's head so hard that the giant shattered to pieces. The blow was so violent that sharp pieces of rock permanently stayed right in Thor's own skull. Thor fell over, and the giant's massive corpse landed directly on top of him. None of the other Aesir gods in the hall was strong enough to push the body off. Ultimately, Thor's young sons, Magni and Modi, had to secretly lift the dead giant to free their dad. At the end of the day, Thor operated as Odin's instrument of war. When Odin lost a bet to the disguised giant Hrimthur, The stonemason who built the walls of Asgard, the Allfather simply sent Thor to execute him on the spot. Thor's brutality even extended to harmless mortals. During this rage, he met the Vanir poet Kvasir. Because Thor couldn't understand the depth of the poetry, he felt stupid. That insecurity enraged him so much that he literally ripped the poet apart with his bare hands. By the time Kratos and Atreus began their journey, Thor had already followed Odin's orders perfectly. He had slaughtered almost every single giant in Midgard, earning his dark, fearful reputation as the strongest Norse god in all the 9 realms. There is a debate online that Tyr could beat Thor in a fight, which is hilarious if you ask me. Thor mid-diffs Tyr in a normal fight. When you look at the actual lore and the raw strength, it is incredibly hard to argue against Thor being the ultimate physical force of nature in the Norse realms. But the craziest thing many didn't notice in the first fight with Kratos is that he literally kills the ghost of Sparta and brings him back to life just to keep beating him. Remember the brutal first encounter in God of War Ragnarok? There is a specific sequence where Kratos' health is fully depleted. The game actually tricks you. It gives you a quick time event that is designed to be unwinnable. No matter how hard you try, it will always play out this way. Your screen fades to black, and the classic game over screen starts to load. Many thought it was a glitch, but in reality, Thor killed Kratos with a fatal blow. He killed Kratos dead on the spot. But after Kratos dies, Thor refuses to let him off that easy. He uses the raw electricity from Mjolnir like a defibrillator to restart Kratos' heart. He brings him right back to life so the fight can continue. Game director Eric Williams confirmed in interviews that this was a 100% canonical death. It was actually a brilliant callback to actual Norse mythology, where Mjolnir possesses the magical power to resurrect the dead, just like Thor does with his 2 goats in the old stories. If you think Thor revived Kratos out of mercy, you are dead wrong. He brought him back because he was unsatisfied with the fight. He wanted to see the real God of War. He felt Kratos was holding back, and he hadn't yet seen the legendary bloodthirsty ghost of Sparta he was promised. He also states that Kratos must live because Odin still has plans for him and Atreus. He was just there to collect a painful blood payment for his dead sons Magni and Modi. What makes the entire sequence even crazier is what the developers originally planned to do. Narrative director Matt Sophos revealed that an early draft of the script actually had Kratos die permanently in this very first fight with Thor. If they had gone with that original script, Kratos would have spent 20 years down in Helheim. The game would have featured a time skip, and a fully grown Atreus would have had to travel into the Norse underworld to finally rescue his father. So why did they change it? Director Eric Williams eventually voted against this permanent death idea. He felt that Kratos dying and fighting his way out of the underworld had been done way too many times in the older Greek games. Doing it again would just lose its emotional impact. Instead, they chose the immediate shocking Mjolnir revival to emphasize just how incredibly powerful Thor is. His role in the apocalyptic event of Ragnarok is pivotal. He was always destined to clash with Jormungandr, and their prophesied battle was said to be so legendary that it would shatter everything in existence. We finally get to see the scale of this duel right here at the end of the game, where both of these titans meet on the burning battlefield of Asgard. According to Freya and Mimir, Yggdrasil is the fabric of reality. It is the world tree. The 9 realms, like Midgard, Alfheim, and Asgard, are completely separate space-time continuums. They actually occupy the exact same physical space. Yggdrasil is the cosmic structure holding all 9 realms of these infinite universes. So, when Thor strikes Jormungandr during Ragnarok, the impact is so overwhelming that it breaks the world tree. And honestly, to damage a thing or entity like the world tree that holds all 9 realms together, you need to have some serious strength. And because Thor hit the giant so hard, the giant is sent back in time, even before the time he was born. Let me tell you, time travel works in God of War. During the Greek saga, the Sisters of Fate threatened to send Kratos back in time. They used magical looms to manipulate timelines. Kratos had to use the magical mirrors of fate to travel back to the Great War. They relied on ancient magic and divine artifacts. Thor, on the other hand, achieved time travel through pure force. He just hit the giant snake so damn hard that the universe almost glitched and sent the giant into the past. This isn't something you can learn by magic or using some kind of trick. This is pure brute force. And as we all know, Kratos has fought several gods, titans, and beings throughout the franchise. But to be honest, I had never seen any god or titan taking Kratos on a 1v1 fight quite like Thor. The first time we met him in the house, he seems like a calm and reasonable person. But the moment Odin gives him the hint, he sends Kratos flying through the roof, and Kratos could barely push the hammer away from his chest. Just imagine the kind of power the user of Mjolnir would hold, because in this universe, it isn't the case of who is worthy enough to lift the hammer. It is simply about who is the strongest. Kratos did lift the hammer just a bit, but Thor controls it at his will, which is a pretty incredible feat on its own. And even Kratos acknowledges the power of Thor, and he admits to Atreus that Thor's blows were as heavy as any I have felt. This right there is respect, from one god killer to another. Considering Kratos' bloody history back in the chains of Olympus, he was overpowered by the fingers of Atlas, a giant that literally holds up the entire Greek world, the heaven and the earth itself on its shoulders. And a compliment from him that Thor's hammer swing hits harder is a big deal in my opinion. For all the OG fans of the franchise, Zeus is the original thunder and lightning god. He one-shot massive titans, yet Kratos says that Thor's raw strikes and Mjolnir combined are a force to be reckoned with. Most gods rely on magic and elemental attacks. Thor's power, on the other hand, is just acceleration. His strikes produce shockwaves that even vibrate inside the enemy's body, and this is exactly how he was able to stop Kratos' heart and then revive him later. During the final battle with Jormungandr, he is also simultaneously fighting with Ragnarok. And let me make this clear for you. Ragnarok is also the same entity that destroyed the Asgard and was the literal cause of Ragnarok. Right after he sends Jormungandr back in time, he flies straight to the lodge and duels with Kratos. Even after surviving heavy combat against a World Eater and a Realm Destroyer, Thor remains incredibly fast and ridiculously strong. He trades heavy blows with the Ghost of Sparta in a brutal fight that completely destroys the surrounding area. Just above Thor, I am placing Odin at number 3. I know what you guys might be saying. Wait, Odin isn't physically as strong as Thor. You're right, about his raw strength at least. But ruling over the 9 realms with an iron fist for centuries requires a completely different, much darker level of power. Odin is called the god of knowledge for a very good reason. He controls everything because he knows everything. Ultimately, this exact obsessive hunger for knowledge is what led straight to his downfall. He was the literal reason for the creation of the realms. Before the 9 realms even existed, there was only primordial void known as Ginnungagap, the blistering fire of Muspelheim, and the freezing ice of Niflheim. When that fire and ice collided, the very first giant emerged, Ymir. Ymir was a being of pure unpredictable chaos. He held the primordial force from which all life could spring. Odin and his brothers, Vili and Ve, viewed this chaotic nature as a direct threat to the strict order they wanted to establish, so they ambushed the ancient giant and slaughtered him. The amount of blood that poured from Ymir's fatal wounds was so impossibly vast that it created a literal flood, drowning almost all of the other primordial giants in existence. Odin killed Ymir and used the giant's corpse as the raw material to build existence itself. This bloody history is exactly why Odin considers himself the rightful owner of the realms, because he was the reason these realms came into existence. He ripped apart Ymir's flesh to create the land of Midgard and the foundations of Asgard. He used the giant's spilled blood to fill the vast oceans. He took the unbroken bones and shaped them into the towering mountain ranges. Finally, he placed Ymir's hollowed skull entirely over the world to create the grand sky. But the most important detail for the events of Ragnarok happened at the exact moment of Ymir's death. Because Ymir was a primordial being holding infinite cosmic potential, his murder literally caused a tear in the fabric of the universe. This tear, in reality, the rift, was hidden deep beneath Odin's private study in Asgard. It had a strange green glow and constantly whispered ancient secrets that even Odin could not understand. This drove him mad. He was hungry for knowledge, as he always was. He wanted to know the answers that only this rift could give him. Odin believed that by assembling the ancient mask of creation, he could look directly into this rift without his mind being destroyed. He desperately hoped the rift would show him what actually happens to gods after they die, and if there is a creator sitting above him. He wanted to steal that ultimate knowledge to avoid his own written death in Ragnarok. He used this bloody story for his own advantage. He claimed that he is the All-Father, the All-Seeing. He is above everyone else. And this is exactly why no one ever dared to challenge him. Odin was so hungry for knowledge that he would do anything for the answers. There is one story of him that proves that he would go to the end of the world for knowledge. Odin realized that to unlock the true ancient power of the runes, a magic that allows a user to manipulate the very laws of the 9 realms, he had to hang himself. So, he took things to the extreme. Odin traveled to the branch of the world tree, Yggdrasil. He deliberately stabbed himself in the side with his own legendary spear, Gungnir, tied a rope around his neck, and hung himself directly from the tree. He stayed hanging there for 9 full days and 9 agonizing nights. He completely refused food, water, or any kind of aid from the other Aesir gods watching him. It was in this agonizing near-death state that the runes finally revealed themselves to him, glowing in the dirt far below his feet. That really transformed him. He became a legendary sorcerer after that. In the God of War lore, runes are essentially the source of reality. By mastering them, Odin gained the ability to rewrite how the universe actually works. This is the exact magic he uses to place the invulnerable spell on his son Balder, and how he created the binding spells powerful enough to freeze even Kratos perfectly in place. But he didn't stop there. He took this runic knowledge and mixed it together with the Vanir Seor magic he later manipulated and stole from Freya. This created a highly lethal hybrid form of sorcery that made him completely unpredictable in any combat situation. This event completely defines Odin's character. He is a god who is entirely willing to brutally torture and kill himself just to know something. Surviving 9 days of hunger and hanging from a rope is a feat only the god of knowledge can pull. From that point on, Odin viewed physical pain, whether it was his own or the suffering of his family, as nothing more than a simple means to reach an end goal. More importantly, this dark ritual was just the start of his ultimate obsession with the rift of creation. In his twisted mind, he figured that if he could survive hanging from the world tree to get the runes, he could definitely find a way to look into the rift to get the ultimate truth. Mimir often points to this specific hanging event as proof that Odin is completely insane. Most gods across these games seek power because they want to rule. Odin seeks power because he is terrified of what he doesn't know. That kind of obsession is deadly. Odin was a master tactician, and he saw things others couldn't. For centuries, the Aesir, the gods of war and might, and the Vanir, the gods of nature and sorcery, were locked in a brutal, endless war. It was a complete stalemate. Neither side was at an advantage. The Aesir could win every physical battle, but the Vanir used ancient Seor magic to heal their fatal wounds, teleport across the battlefield, and manipulate the environment. Every single time Thor smashed a Vanir army, they would simply reappear or regrow. Odin quickly realized that brute force was never going to conquer Vanaheim, but Odin, being Odin, didn't just want to win the war. He wanted to own the magic that was beating him. So, he used this exhaustion of the realms to propose a grand peace treaty. He offered to marry the Vanir leader, Freyja. Odin perfectly played the role of a king who just wanted to end the bloodshed. In reality, he was using the marriage for her magic. As Freyja's husband, Odin gained full unrestricted access to Vanaheim's most sacred secrets. He spent their entire marriage studying her. He learned the deepest secrets of Seor magic. He learned how to tie souls, how to corrupt nature itself, and how to manipulate the threads of fate. Once he felt he had learned enough to completely neutralize the Vanir's magical advantage, his entire personality changed. He took off the mask of the loving husband and began using the very magic Freyja taught him. His magic isn't the only weapon he has. If you have noticed, he also has a spear, which he uses as a walking stick. But that stick is actually a disguise for one of the most powerful weapons in the 9 realms. The spear's name is Gungnir, the Spear of Heaven. It was forged by the dwarven master Ivaldi, who was a master of craftsmanship. This weapon has insane cosmic history. Gungnir was the exact weapon that he used to slaughter Ymir, and that same one he used to stab himself. He uses mastery of Bifrost magic to hide the spear's true form. This weapon can instantly change from a simple walking stick to a lethal spear. During the climax of Ragnarok, he uses this exact trick to catch Thor off guard, and even stabs his own son in the chest. After that, he uses Gungnir to take on Kratos and Atreus as well as Freyja, all at the same time. Odin uses Bifrost energy through the spear. He slams it into the ground to create massive shockwaves. He can also shoot purple beam projectiles mid-air. He can also use the environment to his advantage by using Gungnir. But his strongest weapon wouldn't be his magical spear or even his runes. It was his manipulation. Remember what Mimir warned Kratos the very second they met Odin? Do not trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. After ruling for centuries, Odin knows exactly how to get inside your head, twist your thoughts, and give you exactly what you want to hear to get his way. Just imagine the psychotic level of manipulation it takes to casually invite Loki, the son of the man who brutally murdered your blood, Magni and Modi, right into your home. Odin's most impressive feat of manipulation was living inside Kratos' home for weeks disguised as Tyr. He perfectly played the role of a broken, traumatized pacifist god. He acted completely weak and harmless. He lowered the guard of the most suspicious men in the entire world. As Tyr, he sat at the dinner table, ate their food, and listened to every single plan they made. Because Kratos and Atreus told him everything directly, he knew their exact next moves. He was suspicious from the very start. He preached non-violence. He discouraged Kratos from preparing for war, even delaying the entire resistance from the inside. Odin is a genius at spotting a target's weak point. He realized that the biggest weakness in Kratos was his relationship with Atreus. While Kratos was rightly acting like a strict overprotective father, Odin came in and played the role of the cool grandfather, and he did that perfectly. He convinced Atreus. He told the boy he was special, that his questions mattered, and that his dad was just holding him back. Odin created the perfect condition as well, which made the kid desperate for answers. It took him right into Odin's hands to fetch the mask of creation. He was using Loki as a pawn. Odin purposefully left Atreus alone with Heimdall, knowing that Heimdall's arrogant nature would always start a fight. Then, right at the perfect moment, Odin stepped out to save Atreus and even prioritized Atreus there. In front of Loki, he took his side instead of his loyal servant, Odin, who made the boy feel valued and safe. It made Atreus think, maybe the Allfather isn't as bad as Mimir says. Odin was so incredibly sick-minded that he convinced a room full of veteran warriors and geniuses like Kratos, Freya, and Mimir to walk right into his trap. He lied and convinced them that they could sneak into Asgard undetected, when in reality, he was leading them into a trap. Odin's mind games were so effective that he nearly won the entire apocalyptic war without Thor ever having to slaughter anyone in Ragnarok. If it wasn't for Brooke, he would have successfully deceived everyone. The top two in the God of War franchise are probably the easiest to predict. Zeus was always going to be the second most powerful being in the lore. While Odin was terrifyingly wise and Thor was physically stronger, Zeus exists on a completely different level of power entirely. He is the OG god of lightning, the king of Olympus, and the peak of the Greek pantheon. During the ancient reign of the Titans, his father, Kronos, was informed of a dark prophecy foretelling his eventual downfall at the hands of his own son. To prevent this, Kronos went mad with paranoia and swallowed all of his children whole, one by one. When Zeus was born, his mother, Rhea, was completely devastated by the loss of her first 5 children. She devised a brilliant trick to save him. She wrapped a simple stone in baby clothes and handed it to Kronos, who blindly devoured it, mistaking the rock for his son. Meanwhile, a massive eagle carried the actual infant, Zeus, away to safety. Zeus was raised in secret by the Titan mother, Gaia, blessed with the strength to one day stand up to his tyrant father. During his childhood in hiding, Zeus, since his childhood, hated his father for obvious reasons. He constantly looked forward to the day he would finally release his swallowed siblings. You can even find an old drawing inside Gaia's body portraying a young Zeus ripping open Kronos' belly to set them free. As soon as he became older, Zeus acted according to his master plan. He successfully freed his siblings from Kronos' stomach, betrayed Gaia, and officially declared war on all the Titans. The new rulers of Greece, calling themselves the Olympians, fought their predecessors with terrifying ferocity. This was a battle of unimaginable scale. This completely reformed the landscape of Greece, shaking the very earth with earthquakes and crumbling entire mountain ranges. To finally end the stalemate, Zeus forged the ultimate weapon, the all-powerful blades of Olympus. With a single devastating swing of this blade, Zeus ended the Great War and banished the Titans to the foulest, darkest pits of Tartarus. Interestingly, Zeus was wise enough not to repeat his father's sins. He intentionally spared Kronos' life, hoping to avoid provoking Gaia's immortal curse, placed on those who kill their own father. Also, it was Zeus who built Pandora's box. After the Great War, new threats known as the Evils, fear, hate, and greed, emerged. To protect the world, he ordered Hephaestus, the smith god, to build the Pandora box to lock these evils. But Athena slipped a power that transcended the gods into the box, the power of hope, which was the reason Zeus got defeated. He even made a mistake hiding the box. He built an enormous temple, placed the box inside, and chained it to the back of Kronos, and sentenced his father to wander the desert of lost souls for all eternity. Little did the great Zeus know that creating that box and hiding it in the desert would be the exact events that would eventually doom his entire empire. Although it was technically Hades' birthright to rule as Kronos' eldest son, he agreed to split the domain. Hades took the underworld, Poseidon seized the vast oceans, and Zeus claimed the endless skies. Because Zeus was the undisputed savior of the family and the wielder of the Blade of Olympus, his authority was recognized as given. He officially became the king of the Olympian gods and was seen as the most powerful god the Greek world had ever seen. Zeus, with all his powers, beats the Titans like Kronos. Kronos apparently defeated Uranus, and that makes Zeus more powerful than both Primordials and Titans. We can't really say if he is a universal level or a level below based on gameplay, but devs have claimed that if you follow lore accuracy, the fight between Kratos and Zeus would be faster than light and would destroy the entire surrounding area. So he probably is as powerful as beings who can do these kind of feats. He is the most powerful Greek god. Kratos is more powerful than him, but he is a fallen god, so that makes Zeus the second most powerful character in the Greek pantheon. What he did in the city of Rhodes in God of War 2 proves what kind of monster he was. It shows that he is a king who treats entire armies like insects. Before he wiped out the entire army, Zeus used deception to strip Kratos of his strength. Disguised as a giant eagle, Zeus descended upon the city of Rhodes where Kratos was leading his Spartan army. In a flash, he took Kratos' powers and he infused the stolen magic into the giant bronze Colossus of Rhodes statue. When Kratos was struggling, Zeus offered him the Blade of Olympus as a gift. He convinced the ghost of Sparta to put in the last drops of his godly essence into the sword just to defeat the Colossus. Once Kratos was fatally weakened and the Colossus was dealt with, Zeus finally revealed his true form on the battlefield. Zeus then stood over a dying Kratos and stabbed him through the stomach with the blade and sent his soul to the underworld. The Spartans were the most elite, heavily armored, battle-hardened soldiers in the entire Greek world. They stood no chance. That single energy wave killed thousands of soldiers instantly. In a matter of seconds, the entire Spartan military presence in Rhodes vanished. The blast was so overwhelmingly powerful that it finished the destruction of the city itself. Zeus wanted to break the spirit of Kratos. It reminded Kratos that the age of gods was far from over. He can even come back from the dead. In the bloody climax of God of War 3, Kratos finally impales Zeus directly against the heart of Gaia, using the Blade of Olympus. For literally any other god in the franchise, getting stabbed by the universe's strongest weapon is the definitive end. But Zeus's corruption completely changed the rules. After his physical body died, Zeus's spirit ripped itself out and emerged as a shadowy fear entity. This terrifying form was the literal and physical manifestation of the evil from Pandora's box that had infected him years prior. In this state, Zeus became an absolute horror. Kratos' physical weapons, the legendary Blades of Exile, the Nemean Cestus, passed right through him like nothing. He was essentially a god made of pure energy, and he invaded his mind. He forced Kratos into an internal void where the Spartan was forced to face the agonizing guilt of his past sins. Zeus intended to win the war not by killing Kratos' body, but by completely taking away his sanity and breaking him from within. If you want to see exactly why he is the king, just look at the opening sequence of God of War 3. While the other gods, Poseidon, Hades, and Helios, rushed down the mountain to fight the invading Titans, Zeus just waits at the very top, like the final boss. Zeus's single bolt of electricity was powerful enough to blast through Gaia's arm and torso, knocking the Titan down, who is essentially a walking mountain herself. In the Greek saga, the Sisters of Fate, Lachesis, Atropos, and Clotho, are the ultimate authority. They control the cosmic threads of life for every single mortal, hero, and god. However, Zeus existed on a power tier that completely defied their control. While the sisters claimed to control all of creation, they were visibly terrified of Zeus's wrath. In God of War 2, they explicitly fight Kratos to protect the throne of Zeus. fully knowing that if the king of Olympus falls, the very order of the universe collapses with him. Zeus's power and presence were so immense that he could effectively ignore the destiny laid out for him for centuries. He successfully evaded the prophecy of his own downfall, the marked warrior prophecy. He did this for decades by manipulating events and gods to his exact will. He only finally fell when Kratos had to literally break the loom of fate and shatter time itself just to change history. Zeus is the god of the heavens. He controls his domain, and more importantly, as the god of order, he is the one holding pure primordial chaos from devouring the cosmos. Athena literally states that without Zeus, maintaining reality would be impossible. Even at the very end of God of War 3, with his entire pantheon dead and world in plagues, Zeus believed that he could restore the world to order all by himself. If you played Ragnarok, you remember how Ratatoska split his different emotions into separate squirrels. Zeus does something similar, but on a vastly superior god tier level. Zeus actually splits his godhood into multiple different forms or roles to manage the universe. For example, there is Zeus Catachthonius, the protector of the underworld, and Zeus Philoxenos, the protector of hospitality. These aren't just split personalities of Zeus. They are his divine responsibilities of maintaining mortal existence split into entirely separate functioning forms. As the king of Olympus, Zeus single-handedly decides and approves the roles that his fellow gods play in his cosmic order. Remember when Kratos killed Ares? The other gods debated who should take the empty throne, but Zeus quickly shut it down, making one thing perfectly clear. Kratos didn't seize Ares' throne. Zeus allowed him to ascend. He holds the keys to godhood, and just as easily as he gives power, he can take it away as well. The most terrifying example of this is Prometheus. When the Titan defied him by giving fire to mortals, Zeus punished him with his supreme authority. Zeus reached into Prometheus's very being and completely stripped him of his divine immortality and left him vulnerable to never-ending torture. Long before he was a king, he was a survivor, and that ultimately shaped him into the most lethal fighter in existence. Zeus has centuries of pure brutal fighting experience. He's a master with his weapons, but he is also an exceptionally talented brawler. His raw skill and reflexes allowed him to challenge a fully enraged Kratos on almost completely equal footing for an extended period of time before finally losing. He spends the entire beginning of his life secretly training just for the day he would confront his Titan father, Kronos. After that, he engaged in bloody earth-shattering physical and magical combat with the Titans for centuries. When the divine war against the giants broke out, Zeus led the charge and slaughtered them. And when the towering monster Typhon challenged Olympus after the giants were slain, Zeus stepped up and dealt with him, as confirmed by Typhon himself in the God of War 2 novels. But what makes him so much more dangerous than a simple brawler is his high-level intellect. Zeus is the ultimate planner among the gods, always working his invisible schemes that only he knows about. The events of the very first God of War game are a testament to this. He didn't want to get his hands dirty or break his law, so he used Kratos for Ares' downfall. He transformed into a gravedigger that saves Kratos' life, helping him win the war against Ares without even showing his true face. Zeus is the undisputed master of war. It was his elite leadership skills, unmatched battle prowess, and sharp sense of diplomacy that led the rest of the gods to victory. Under his command, the Olympians went from being a group of rebellious nobodies hiding in caves to an unchallenged pantheon that everyone feared. He built an empire that completely controlled the entire world in every single aspect. And before we move on and unveil our number one strongest being in God of War's universe, I want to give an honorable mention to Gaia, the Titan. Gaia is one of the biggest beings in God of War, and while we all know her from her iconic voice in the original games, she was the narrator in the original games. Gaia is the primordial goddess of the earth, the mother of the Titans, and great-grandmother of the Olympian gods themselves. She is Mother Earth herself. Gaia plays too much of a primary role in the God of War series for her not to be included on this list. She's the primary narrator for many of the games, and she was the one who literally carried Kratos up the side of Mount Olympus at the beginning of God of War 3. But perhaps her biggest feat was deceiving Kratos. When his wife, Rhea, became pregnant with her sixth child, Zeus, the grief was just too much to bear. Desperate, she turned to her mother, Gaia, for help. Gaia provided Rhea with a massive rock known in the lore as the Omphalos Stone, and had Rhea wrap it tightly in clothes that perfectly resemble a newborn infant. When Rhea presented this to Kratos, believing it was his son, the Titan King swallowed the stone whole, and Zeus was saved. But Kratos thought that now there would be no one to dethrone him. Gaia took the baby Zeus to the island of Crete, hiding him away in the shadows. She trained him, nurtured him. First off, we need to understand that the physical Titan form Kratos interacts with is just an avatar of Gaia. In her true non-physical primordial form, Gaia is unbound by time itself. She possesses a form of abstract existence, meaning she is literally Earth. Her connection to the planet is so big that according to the extended lore, when she inhales, mountains rise up, and her sigh causes river valleys to form and entire continents to move. In the myths, as long as there is even a rock or grass in the world, she has presence and total control over it. She could literally feel the pain of the world bleeding when Kratos started killing off the Olympians. When it comes to raw attack potency, Gaia is a powerhouse comparable to the strongest titans like her son, Kronos, and grandson, Atlas. We literally see her knock Poseidon completely out of his oceanic elemental form with a single punch. She took multiple strikes of massive electricity and was repeatedly pierced by Poseidon's attacks without being incapacitated. Her greatest weakness, though, wasn't strength. It was actually her arrogance that eventually led to her downfall. She was really stubborn and thought she was enough to take on the god of Olympus. She thought Kratos was just a tool to help the Titans reclaim their era, leading to her betraying him. That arrogance sealed her fate. The only thing truly difficult about fighting her is actually managing to kill something the size of a continent. Yet, Kratos does just that. In one of the most brutal moments in gaming history, Kratos literally stabs through Zeus himself and directly into Gaia's big heart for the final blow in God of War 3. And finally, at number 1, we have the ghost of Sparta himself, Kratos. Well, you guys would be thinking that it's kinda boring and it is almost predictable. And others would think that it is the unseen plot armor that makes Kratos the strongest being in this universe. Everyone has their own opinion, but there is no shadow of doubt that Kratos is not only the strongest being in his own universe, but he is one of the strongest in gaming's history. I see some debate online that the Doom guy can kill Kratos, or that Master Chief can kill Kratos. Come on, wake up to reality. They are not even close to Kratos' level. He's an elite level fighter, a ruthless god, and his Greek version would not only kill gods, but kill them so ruthlessly that everyone just gets scared. He is the definition of a badass, the unkillable god. Although he has been defeated by Ares and Zeus on some occasions, but the best trait he has is how he comes back from literally anywhere. When Ares killed him, he came back from the dead and avenged him. Bro is literally Aura himself, and even in his dialogues, there is no one more badass, especially when he said,
"The hands of death could sisters of fate could not hold me. And you will not see the end of this day. I will have my revenge!
From the moment he was born, he was trained as a tough Spartan soldier. He is the demigod son of Zeus, who was unveiled later in the games, and his mother's name was Callisto. The biggest mistake Zeus made was leaving Kratos alive when he was just a kid. Hera was outraged at Zeus and ordered the execution of Kratos from the day he was born. When Kratos was just a kid, there was a prophecy of a marked warrior who would take down Zeus. So he sent Ares and Athena to hunt this marked warrior. Athena noticed Deimos' strange birthmarks and took him to Thanatos, the god of death. Kratos tried to save his brother, but Ares struck him and knocked him out. This was the character development arc of Kratos, where he himself tattooed the exact Deimos birthmark to his body. This was the first point that turned him from a young innocent Spartan to a god filled with rage, who wanted revenge. Kratos trained so hard that he slaughtered everyone and anyone in his way. He encountered Poseidon's champion, Herodias, and killed him as the Spartans conquered his army. He also killed Artemis and Helios' champion. Years later, Kratos climbed the ranks to become a legendary Spartan general. He won battle after battle. He used effective tactics that crushed rival armies. However, with every single victory, his pride and his dark hunger for power grew. Despite the desperate pleas of his wife, Lysandra, Kratos refused to stop. He vowed to continue his bloody conquests until the glory of Sparta is known throughout the world, only spending time with his family during the brief returns home. But every winning streak eventually comes to an end. Kratos and his elite Spartan army finally met their match when they clashed with the merciless barbarian tribes from the east. Numbering in the thousands, the horde was led by Kratos' old enemy Ulric, the barbarian king. Outnumbered and completely overpowered, the Spartans quickly found themselves being slaughtered on the battlefield. Left entirely at the mercy of Ulric, who was seeking his own revenge against the Spartan for causing the death of his father, Kratos faced certain death. Refusing to accept defeat, in a final act of pure desperation, Kratos looked to the sky and called out to Ares. He offered the trade, and this was the moment that made him the ghost of Sparta.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours.
Ares accepted the pact. The god of war unleashed his divine power, instantly wiping out the barbarian horde. He then gifted Kratos the legendary Blades of Chaos as a permanent symbol of his new servitude, and the blazing chains were seared directly onto the Spartan's flesh. The second Kratos received the blades, he killed Ulric by decapitating the barbarian king in single combat and securing a brutal victory for Sparta. For the time being, Kratos served his new master loyally. He raided villages, slaughtered thousands of innocents, and spread chaos in the name of the god of war. Under Ares' influence, he lost the shred of humanity he had, but Ares had a master plan. He wanted to strip away what little of humanity Kratos had and wanted to make him an emotionless, stoic warrior. During a raid on a village, Ares magically transported Lysandra and Kratos' young daughter into the village temple. Kratos ignored the warnings of the village oracle. He blindly slaughtered everyone there, and when the red mist faded and he looked down, he realized he had murdered his own wife and daughter. Ares justified this massacre, and then Kratos walked out with Oracle, cursing him for his horrific sins. From that day onward, Kratos became known as the Ghost of Sparta, his skin now pale from the ashes that coated him. To other mortals, he was now marked by his ghostly white skin. The knowledge of his past actions often repulsed them to the point where they would rather die than allow him to save their lives. He became known as the personification of cruelty and selfishness. Word of this metamorphosis would spread even outside of Greece, as Norse god and advisor to Odin, Mimir who would become a future ally to Kratos himself, would later on instantly recognize who Kratos was. Well, this was exactly how he became the legendary ghost of Sparta. But his strength? He was born with it. It is the kind of raw, terrifying strength that gods the size of Kratos simply do not have. Kratos' physical strength is essentially limitless, as he is canonically capable of matching the force of literally any opponent he faces. His feats even defy physics sometimes, but we'll give the edge. He is the God of War after all. In God of War 3, Kratos was caught directly between the fingertips of the 1,600-foot-tall Titan king, Kronos. Instead of being crushed, he held the giant's fingers open through brute force. If we do the boring maths, it is roughly 7 million tons, which means that the physical force of this will be well into the billions of newtons. Back in Chains of Olympus, Kratos fought Atlas, the Titan permanently tasked with holding the entire Greek cosmos, the sky and the universe on his shoulders. When Atlas tried to do the same as Kronos, Kratos actually resisted it, pushing back against a being carrying the weight of the universe. You'd think that with time, Kratos would have slowed down. Well, with age, gods get stronger. In the 2018 God of War, Kratos performed a feat of strength that left players completely speechless. He flipped the massive Tia's temple completely upside down just to reveal a hidden path. If you don't know much about this temple is constructed on a central axle and is a magical gateway to all 9 realms. While fans debate whether he flipped the actual realms themselves, the physical structure alone is estimated to developers to weigh approximately 1.7 million tons. Just for a size comparison, game director Cory Barlog noted that a very similar feat when Kratos pushed the temple's bridge on its track involved moving nearly 1.8 million tons. That is roughly twice the weight of the Golden Gate Bridge. Flipping temples is cool and everything, but his psychological toughness is unbelievable. When he was navigating the memory-based trials of Valhalla, Kratos was forced to relive that dark past challenge, where he must burn a victim in a cage to progress. And there, Valhalla replaces Mimir with the sun god Helios. Valhalla is a realm built on the dark memories of the past of magical rules. Breaking a physical object within a memory should be completely impossible, but Kratos, being the badass he is, reached out and used raw strength to shatter the cage and break the logic of the realm. But perhaps his biggest feat would be changing fate itself. Yes, he is not just physically strong, he literally went back in time, changed the past, and brutally killed the very beings that were responsible for destiny itself. He shattered the rules of reality. He killed all 4 sisters of fate separately with a different plan, and how he did that was miraculous. The Sisters of Fate warned to send him back in time and erase his existence. During an insane battle, Atropos actually tried to erase Kratos from existence by traveling back in time to his final fight with Ares. Kratos literally followed her through a time mirror, protected his past self, and ultimately trapped both sisters inside interdimensional mirrors before shattering them and instead removing them from the timeline. He then fought his way up the silkworm-like body of the final sister, Clotho. He finished her by impaling her skull with a giant pendulum blade. By slaughtering the sisters, Kratos gained full access to the cosmic loom of fate. He used it to literally rewind time to the exact moment Zeus betrayed him, completely rewriting his own destiny and eventually pulling the Titans out of the past to storm Mount Olympus. They insisted that destiny was written and that interference with the threads of life was never meant for mortal hands. As Clotho died, she gave a chilling prophetic warning. You must not tamper with destiny, Kratos. You will destroy everything. She was completely right. Kratos' success ultimately led to the apocalyptic collapse of the entire Greek world. Even after their defeat, their haunting voices echoed a truth that would define his internal struggle for decades. Your soul will never find peace for what you have become. Kratos kills about one god in every game, a total of about 14 gods in general, with the most notable exception being God of War 3, where he kills a total of 7 gods. It is unknown why many characters, even if they were fully aware of Kratos' demigod status, still call him a mortal. It could be that they did not feel like calling him a demigod, or they use it as an insult, making Kratos feel that he is beneath them. With his timeline effectively rewritten and destiny conquered, you'd think Kratos would have found some sort of peace. But the life of the Ghost of Sparta is complicated. In the Greek saga, one thing is written: sons killing their fathers. And this is one of those things that Kratos even regrets, and stops Sparta from fulfilling this curse. He is cursed to destroy his own family. He was forced to reluctantly kill his own mother, Callisto, in Ghost of Sparta, and then he brutally beat his father, Zeus, to death in God of War 3. But the rare exceptions to this blind rage always revolve around protecting the innocent or the people he loves. Kratos completely ignores his own safety when he searched for the ambrosia to save his sick daughter, Calliope. He ignored every single godly warning to march into death's domain to save his brother Deimos. He desperately tried to prevent the child Pandora from sacrificing herself in the flame of Olympus, and ultimately, he traveled across the Norse realms, fighting gods and monsters just to honor his second wife's final wish and spread her ashes in Jotunheim with his son Atreus. Kratos is capable of genuine sorrow. We see this early in the timeline during Ascension, where he is visibly shaken by the Furies' solutions and genuinely heartbroken that he has to kill his ally, Orcus, just to free himself from Ares' blood oath. Kratos even killed Hercules, probably the strongest one in the Greek saga. In history, Hercules is the embodiment of strength and bravery. Kratos never hated Hercules, and in fact, never even wanted to kill him. Hercules felt overshadowed by Kratos' fame and status as the god of war. He believed that Zeus always favored Kratos and gave him the better task. Zeus handed Hercules the 12 labors, in which he added a 13th and final labor he tasked himself with killing. Ultimately, Kratos and Hercules faced off, and Kratos did one of the most brutal executions of the series. He first rammed him into the spike walls of the arena, stripping his helmet. During the fight, Kratos managed to stab Hercules in the arm and took his signature weapon, the Nemean cestus, and used it against him. He beat his face so hard with multiple blows that it shattered the arena floor. That was the prime, ruthless god of war. He killed many other gods, and each one with a different method. He also killed the sun god in a brutal way. He injured Helios and ripped his head off with his bare hands. Eventually, the sun disappeared, and the world was plunged into eternal darkness. Hermes was the fastest god in that universe. He even mocked Kratos for his lack of speed. Kratos needed Hermes' magical boots to scale the high walls of Olympus to reach the flame of Olympus. Kratos eventually wounded the god by causing a massive statue to fall on him. As a wounded Hermes tried to crawl away, Kratos severed both of his legs at the shins to claim the boots of Hermes. His death caused a large plague in the world, which took many lives. I mentioned why and how he killed Ares, and killing Ares was a big deal, because that made him the new god of war. He also killed the literal god of death. For decades, he had kept Kratos' brother, Deimos, imprisoned and mercilessly tortured deep within the domain of death. This was all due to the Olympians' paranoid fear of the marked warrior prophecy. Kratos fought the underworld, and then Thanatos managed to strike down and kill Deimos right in front of his brother's eyes. Witnessing his brother's death broke him. He entered Spartan rage and overpowered the primordial giant. Kratos finished the fight in the most savage way imaginable. He plunged his bare hands into Thanatos' chest and tore the god of death's heart out of his body. Kratos then went on to slaughter the big three, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. They thought that together they could stop Kratos and his redemption, but they were wrong. They underestimated the power of a broken god. The arrogant god of the sea was the very first to fall. Riding a massive thing made of watery hippocampi, Poseidon pulled Kratos right off Gaia, but Kratos battered the god entirely out of his elemental armor. In a beautiful first-person sequence, Kratos beat down Poseidon's face, took out his eyes with his bare thumbs, snapped his neck, and then tossed his lifeless body off the mountain to drown the mortal world in a massive global flood. The Lord of the Underworld tried to steal Kratos' soul using the chained claws of Hades. In a dark duel in the deepest pits of hell, Kratos overpowered the god, ripped the magical claws right out of his hands, and ruthlessly used them against him. He tore Hades' own soul completely out of his giant body, absorbing the dark magic and leaving the underworld to instantly descend into wandering chaos. Zeus was the final nail in the coffin, and killing him officially placed him right at the very top. Kratos finally cornered his manipulative father. Stripped of all his magical weapons, Kratos relied on pure, unadulterated rage. He pinned the king of Olympus against the rocks and beat him endlessly with his bare fists. He then went from Greek realms to Norse, as if nothing happened. He destroyed a whole pantheon just for his revenge, and with time, he grew stronger and became a much calmer dude. He then had a family, a giant wife, and his son, Atreus. Just as we thought he was living a normal life, then came the twist. His wife died, and her last wish was to spread her ashes onto the highest mountains in all of the realms. A stranger came knocking, which turned out to be Balder, the god of light, the one who was literally unkillable, because he had a curse upon him which made him invulnerable to all kinds of attacks. Guess what he did next? Yes, he killed the god that couldn't feel anything. His biggest achievement in the Norse realms would be once again defying fate itself. In God of War Ragnarok, he met the Norns, and they said that Kratos would die, but he said,
No, death can have me when it earns me.
This is the most amount of aura farming a god can do. He then forged a weapon with the holy blood with the help of Brok and the Dropnir ring. Heimdall is the one god that can see the future. He was arrogant and challenged the god of war to a fight. Kratos used the power of the Dropnir spear and killed him in the most brutal way. This was where we saw the true god of war. He was so powerful that even Odin was afraid of his powers. He knew what kind of monster he was. He even threatened the Allfather by saying,
Return my son, or you may meet the god I once was.
This was a direct warning which he later fulfilled, showing his true Spartan colors. And Heimdall is one of the only gods who he killed during the Norse saga. He also convinced Surtur to join his bloody rampage and brought an end to the Allfather's reign. He even fought toe-to-toe with the god of thunder, who is arguably the strongest in terms of pure strength, and he even impressed Thor during the first fight. And finally, at the end, he beats Thor but lets him go. Because, let's be honest, gone are the days when Kratos would kill gods for just his revenge. Our boy has changed quite a lot, but Odin betrayed his son and killed him. Kratos, Loki, and Freya together defeated Odin and destroyed Asgard. So it is safe to say that even after countless deaths and defeats, Kratos still stands tall as the strongest being in all of God of War. While Zeus, Odin, or Thor all had something better in their arsenal, Kratos had always found ways to outsmart and ultimately kill his enemies. That's it, guys. The strongest beings in God of War facts. If you enjoyed this one and want to watch another video, I suggest watching 2 hours of the God of War 2018 facts video that's on your screen. Click it and I'll see you there.